Call this meeting to order at 6:30 in the evening on Monday, December 16th. A recognition of all members present, the council is present, and school board members are present. If everyone would join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Under general, I have, one comment to make. Tonight is our city administrator, Kevin Sutherland's last council meeting as city administrator. Kevin joined us in 2015, 2 months shortly before I began on the city council, and he's made significant contributions to the continued growth and development of Saco. Kevin, we thank you for your dedication and thoughtful leadership. Please join me in wishing Kevin well in his future endeavors. We will have an open house this Friday from 8 to 9:30 in the downstairs City Hall conference room, where there will be coffee and snacks. Feel free to stop by. Thank you very much. Moving on to public comment. We have 3 folks who've signed up for public comment. First up is Kelly Archer. Just as a reminder, folks, please use the microphones and speak directly into them so that folks can hear you at home. And you really have to pull the microphones really close to make sure that you're being heard. So thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Kelly Archer, 185 Bradley Street. I am also the chair of the Saco Historic Preservation Commission. Congratulations to all of the incoming councilors and the ones that have remained, and to the new mayor, Mr. Doyle. Welcome. I just want to make a few comments, a little bit of housekeeping on your packet from this evening. First of all, I would like to thank you, Mr. Doyle, for Joseph Gunn to be the council liaison after tonight. We welcome you. On page 8 of the packet, 6F, the clarification of the HPC section 234.13. I read over that document. It was a little bit difficult to read, but after talking with Michelle and Emily did talk to the attorney on why that language is like that. It's because the HPC was approved for the new zoning November 18th last month, whereas the zoning ordinance revisions aren't going to be done until the spring. So it's a little bit off-putting, but I do agree with it, and I just wanted to let you know that I do believe in the wording of that document. I also want to thank the city for the purchase of 12 School Street. It's a historic resource within our district. I'm looking forward to what Ryan Summer and the Saco Parks and Recreation and the HPC looks forward to what's going to happen there. Then again on page 116, Appendix F, letter H, regarding the boards and commissions. Number 1, topic that I would want to have included in that paragraph would not only include the 5 regular members, 5 associate members, but for advisory members, we do have 1. We will be seeking many more in 2020, and to include that, and also to change the at-will to commission meets on the 2nd Wednesday at 4 p.m. at the City Hall Conference Room. To be revised in that document. Thank you very much. And the very last thing is, you did get the email for the invite to our second soiree at 13 Cross Street, an 1830 federal-style building. We're going to be having cocktails, conversation, and hors d'oeuvres this Thursday at from 5 to 8. Drop in at will. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kelly. For some of us, we will be in Augusta at an MMA training that night, so some of us will not be able to attend, but thank you for the invitation. Next up is John Harkins.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council and school board, I want to congratulate the new members, and we look forward to a good relationship here. As president of the Saco Citizens for Sensible Government, we look forward to a more open process and one that's receptive to the public and one that's truly transparent. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Thank you. Up next is Kevin Roach.
Hi, Kevin Roach, 18 Vines Road. Mr. Mayor, stole some of my thunder, half my speech, so save some time. But again, my congratulations to Kevin Sutherland for a job well done. We've made such progress from 6 years ago, and I just want to make sure that everyone doesn't forget that. And also my public congratulations to yourself for mayor and the new council. You're in for some exciting times, and I don't miss it in a lot of ways, but it should be a great experience for you guys. I'm here tonight to speak to the agenda item of the school budget to actual, your update. Back on September 16th, the school liaison had given the prior council an update, a concerning update that said that the upcoming numbers could be tricky, and that the administration board will update you as council throughout the process. And then on September 25th, I believe, you had that joint council where the TA sped costs were an issue. I know only if some of you were there, but that was projected to be a $400,000 to $500,000 shortfall. So tonight I would be asking as council for what that update is. I'd also see that there was nothing in the packet provided to you until I guess this weekend, and then to this moment, or maybe just recently, revenue has been presented to you, which is going to be very important to fund the schools. So, that is how schools are funded. So, I would ask. I don't know if you have time to review that, but I would be asking where we stand specifically on the day program revenue, which is projected to be $1 million from almost nothing last year. So I would ask that. In the numbers I think you have, I'd ask that why debt service is being presented as a budget savings right now. That's, I think, paid just one time a year. Why that's a savings. I would like to take special note to thank the school's finance director and the school IT director for getting the budget online. It was not put online until last week, but I'd like to thank them publicly to be able to listen to constituents to get that on there. And then finally, I see that there's a lot of concern or almost blame on notes that council is somehow responsible for the shortfall, the over budget of technology, curriculum, operations, but summer school, you have no power over summer school. I think that's clear. And then on pre-K, there's no notes there. So I especially look at the legal and find out why schools budgeted $0 for legal, considering everything that was going on. Thank you. Please ask the right questions, and then it's going to be your process going forward. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Is there any other public comment? Moving on to the consent agenda, there is one change to, excuse me, one change to section E, and that is the Transit Committee. It should say Transit Committee and not Shuttle Bus Committee. So that is the one change, and with that change, do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Councilor Minthorn has moved. Is there a second? Second. Councilor Archer has seconded. Any discussion? Anyone like to pull any item? Councilor Johnson?
Maybe not.
So, for the record, the consent agenda is generally utilized for items that have been previously discussed in consensus and/or routine items. Tonight, item B has yet been discussed, and section 2.5 of the charter requires that this be elected by this body, the city council. So I'd like to pull that. And item F, I personally feel that this should be read into the record since it's an official action on zoning. Which is the historic preservation.
Thank you. We will pull item B and item F to move down into agenda items. With the remaining items, item A, item C, item D, item E, item G, and item H. That is what we're voting on. Councilor Archer? Aye. Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Copeland?
Yes.
Councilor Minthorn?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail? Yes. Councilor Johnson?
Yes.
Consent agenda is approved, 7-0, with item B and item F pulled. Moving on to agenda items, agenda item B. Councilor Copeland.
The background is Article 2, Section 2.05, Election and Term, subsection C of the City Charter states, "The City Council shall elect from its membership a deputy mayor who shall exercise all powers of the mayor during temporary absence or disability of the mayor. In the event of a vacancy in the office of mayor, the deputy mayor shall assume the office of mayor with all the duties and obligations of that office in accordance with the provisions of Section 2.06C1. Staff recommends the election of a deputy mayor. Be it ordered that the City Council move to elect Councilor Alan Minthorn as deputy mayor of the City of Saco for the term of 1 year commencing December 14th, 2020. I think that should be 2019. I move to approve the order.
Is there a second? It's been a motion, and Councilor Archer seconded. Any discussion? No discussion. Roll call vote. Councilor Archer? Aye. Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Copeland?
Yes.
Councilor Minthorn?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnson? No. 6-1, the motion passes. Agenda item F. Councilor Johnson?
On November 18, 2019, the City Council approved the Historic Preservation Ordinance as rewritten through the zoning ordinance revision process. The Council approved the rewritten ordinance to replace existing ordinance section 230-413 to clarify the record for codification purposes. Staff recommends the following motions. The purpose of these motions is to repeal existing HPC ordinance section 330-413, replace existing HPC ordinance with the updated ordinance adopted on November 18th, 2019, to be recodified as section 230-413 of the City Code. This item commentary includes a copy of the updated ordinance language that was approved by the City Council, presented at the time as Article 19 of the proposed zoning ordinance. I move that the City Council repeal Section 230-413 of the City Code and replace it with the HPC ordinance that City Council adopted on November 18th, 2019, referred to as Article 19, and hereby recodified as Section 230-413 of the City Code.
Councilor Johnston has made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilor Minthorn has seconded. Any discussion? City Administrator?
It might help if I just explain what this is and why it's on here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So when the council approved the Article 19 version of, it's the exact same thing, it's just a title change. It references the wrong, document that doesn't exist yet. So it referenced what we hope to change for the whole zoning document. What we should have done is ask the council to approve this document with a title that refers to the current zoning law. So it's just a title change, and we just need to show our codification company, which is E-Codes, we need to show that the council has taken a vote that says, yes, this is actually what we were talking about, Section 230 of our code. So it doesn't change any of the substance of what was approved by council last month. This is simply just the title change.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Councilor Archer? Aye. Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Copeland?
Yes.
Councilor Minthorn?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Item passes 7-1.
7-0.
7-0, sorry. Excuse me. Thank you.
You remember you don't get a vote anymore, right?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Sorry. Moving on to agenda item A, original A, is budget updates and discussion with the school board. Superintendent Patsy, thank you. Jason, thank you. You've passed out some materials here to the council and to the school board. Do you want to run through those? Thank you. Speak real close.
Can you hear? Nope.
Yeah, speak real close.
Can you hear me yet? I am speaking louder. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Sounds bad.
I don't think it's going over the intercom. Hello, hello.
Check, check.
Is that better? Much better. All right. Well, good evening. Tonight, we gave you some handouts back on Friday as well as some handouts for this evening that we want to discuss based on some questions and concerns and just more along some more information that Councilor Johnson was looking for as well. So tonight, we're going to go over where we are currently in November. Currently, we're projected to be at 41.7%. Our current financial statements are coming in at 40.65%. There are obviously some, as public comment was stated, some expenses that have not occurred or hit. The debt service payment will be coming. Debt service payment was made this month, so that will be reflected in next month's financial statements. With reference to the city council reductions, I just kind of want to go over a little bit of a history since there's 3 new council members on board now. So back in May, when we have our annual budget review with the council, and so there was this discussion since last year, our fiscal year, we ended in a positive note. We were estimating at the time around $1.3 million. I still haven't got the final preliminary audit to share that with you. I was hoping to have that for tonight, but it does look like we came in right at about $1.3 million. At the time, the city discussion was in order to keep the mill rate low, there was discussion about reducing our budget $1.1 million. The intent of that conversation that evening was to take it from the our potential surplus that we were projecting. But the way that the budget was reduced, it was reduced by each cost center. So it actually was, in order for us to reflect that savings to the city on the mill rate, we had to reduce our expenditures. So city council essentially has the ability to adjust up or down the budget, and based on each individual cost center. So the consensus was at the end of that evening that we were going to reduce 1.1 million out of 8 of the different cost centers, because obviously we can't reduce our debt service because our debt is our debt. So what we had to do was, for accounting purposes, had to reduce all of our individual expenditure lines in each cost center. So with reference to, say for example, our legal fees. So under system support, the original budget was $757,000. Well, we had to take out $137,500 of that. So we essentially had to take line items that we have actual budgetary expenditures and just completely delete them or remove them in order to reduce our budget based on each one of those individual cost centers. Okay? So essentially what this meant, and I presented this back in September with the City Council in our joint workshop that we had there. At the end of this fiscal year, it is going to show that we went over our budget, our expenditure budget, by a minimum of $1.1 million. The reason why I say that is because 95%, and the reason why I say 95% is we had contingency in there, okay? So we have a dollar amount in for contingency, but all the expenses that we reduced were actual essential expenditures for the school department. So line items like legal fees. Well, the board has legal costs. Summer school, I think, was also referenced. We had summer school, but in order to meet our $137,000 reduction, I had to just delete the account numbers. Now, true expenses were going to come from there, but I just couldn't show it as a budgetary amount in order to meet the $1.1 million reduction. I'm not sure if I'm being very clear here or not. I'm kind of getting a little foggy looks here and there. But I'm trying to explain the process in which we had to do in order to get our budget to match what the council vote was. Does that make sense? Is this a good time to answer questions all around that?
Councilor, any questions? School board, any questions?
So when I reference it down below, it's not, I'm not trying to throw city council under the bus. What I'm essentially trying to do is state the reason why there's no money underneath that line is because that is one of the lines that I had to reduce to make it work. It's not necessarily saying that the city council removed that, but it's for us to keep auditing standards of why and where we're going over and the reasons for it. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. I don't know if there's any specific questions on the expenditure report that you received, but a couple of the main categories that I touched upon back in September. One major concern we have this year is our special ed department. 2 different reasons for that. One is our Thornton Academy tuition for special education. The story behind that is back in January of last year, we asked them kind of mid-year all the time to say, hey, whereabouts do you see that the expenditures are going to come in at for this year? Trying to do a forecast. So basically come January, February, I really try to forecast to the end of June, try to get it pretty close to where we're going to end. They came back with it being about $1.1 million in expenses, which at the time that would have shown a $200,000 surplus from what we budgeted. That's great. So we reached back out, said, okay, so you're looking at this? I said, yeah, okay. So we built our budget based on that dollar amount. So we built the budget with an additional $100,000, knowing that TA's expenses usually go up about $80,000 to $100,000 a year. Budget process was gone through, budget was approved. The end of June, we get the final bill from Thornton Academy for the special ed department, and they reached out and realized they had made an equation error on how the community's different expenses were allocated. So instead of it being projected $1.1 million expenditures, it actually ended at $1.53 million. So instead of us having a $200,000 surplus, we actually cost us about $200,000 more last year. First thing that came to my mind is, okay, so if the new norm is 1.5, what are you looking at for next year? Because we had only budgeted 1.2 million at the time. So the final numbers have come in, and it's just over $1.8 million in expenses for next year. So that's causing a shortfall in special ed of about $630,000. So that's a major concern for the school department. Yep.
So I also think, just with the new councils, hello and welcome. I think it's important too that that is part of the TA contract that we have for 10 years. So when students come in, so we had transfer students come in last year. They also had to deal with other issues, and so they can hire at will and then bill us at the end of the year. So we have no real control over the special ed TA money at TA. I just want to be very clear about that. So I don't know if you all know that. So that's the reason, and that's why Jason usually gets a mid-year forecast, and we've been communicating with them ongoing. So I just wanted to clarify that point.
One of the other causes of concerns for special ed is our staffing. We will go over the student numbers as well as our staffing needs shortly from what I just handed out to you tonight. There's a significant increase in special ed students. We had over 41 transfers in for the district. We are up, again, I'll go over that in a minute, but what that causes is that in their IEPs, it's required to have one-on-ones, or there's certain mandates for how many students can be per teacher-student ratio based on the needs of the students. So as we discuss in a few minutes, the staffing as well as the students, you'll see where there's an influx there. So that's also cause for concern. Currently, the Thornton Academy regular ed tuition, we have budgeted as of October 1 count, 10 students more than what currently is enrolled. So that could potentially be a positive savings for the district. We won't know that final amount until the MAT is published, as well as our April count. So with Thornton Academy, we have our April 1 count and our October 1 count. And we take the average, and whatever that average is what we get paid, what we get billed for tuition on. The MAT, which is maximum allowable tuition, that is set by the state based on the average cost that all the high schools spend in the current 18-19 fiscal year, and they average based on how many students are attending school. So it's a set rate. Once that rate is published, which it's usually published by now, so it should be out hopefully any day, we'll have exactly a knowledge of at least what the MAT is going to be and an approximate amount of what savings that could or may not have based on those numbers. And that's it as far as the financial statements, unless there were specific questions that was handed out prior to. Be a good time for questions and answers on this piece. We'll have a little bit more information going forward if you have questions for that as well. Figured I'd just take a pause if there's any other additional questions now, or we want us to move on.
Council questions? Councilor Johnston?
Could you explain to me what PACTS is? What's the acronym?
It doesn't really have an acronym. It's better than calling it the behavior room. So what happens when we hired our new director of instructional support last year, we changed the name of the behavior room to PATHS, so it's more positive. These are where our most neediest students are. There's a PATHS program in each of the schools, Fairfield, Young, Burns, and SMS. And working with TA and talking with Rainey just like last month, they want to start one up at TA2 because they need help as well. So that's what that means.
All right, thank you.
And that's the source of the BHP and the Maine Care money too.
Thank you. Councilor Minthorn?
Jason, on report number 13191, which is about, I don't know, halfway through the packet, under the 990 secondary ed, on the first line,
I'm sorry, is there a title to that report? It should be a department.
it's general fund budget to actual for secondary ed. As I said, it's about halfway through.
Let's just make sure we're using our mics, folks.
I'm on it.
What was the report number? I'm sorry, 13?
13191.
Okay.
It's the 990 secondary education, 1200 regular second ed. It's after the pre-K sheet, about midway through.
Right below that report, it should say statement code. What does that statement code say?
Statement code DW-TA.
Okay, so that's the tuition, Thornton Academy tuition, yep.
Yep. If you look at our adopted budget and our revised budget, we have the same number for the 12 months. If you divide the 12 months by 12 to kind of figure out where we might be on a monthly, it comes in about 888,392 and a few pennies. If you look at the reported period of 7/1 to 11/30, the 3,918,658, that's coming in about 990,000 per month versus the 888. And then current period for November, we're at 870. Is there any way to get a handle? Are they that much off every month, or what's going on there, just for my understanding?
Sure. It's actually a set schedule, but the difference is we pay them 24 payments.
Okay.
So the first payment isn't usually paid until either the last payment in July. So it's usually, so essentially what we end up doing is either we hold the first payment in July all month, and we start in August. It depends on really when the schedule starts. So it's equal installments for 24 payments. And essentially what we've done in the past was when we weren't a part of the city and cash flow could be a potential problem, we used to hold off on the first month of July to get our cash flow where it needed to be. It also, at this point now, it starts where we usually make the first payment in the end of July and last payment in the end of June, because then there's usually that true up at the very end. Sometimes we owe them a little bit more money, sometimes they owe us a little bit of money. So, but it is a 24 payment cycle. So if you divide that by how many, but
I'm just curious because
Sure.
the difference of the numbers ends up about $250,000
in 1 month.
overall.
In 1 month, we may end up paying it 3 times based on the way that the
length of the
accounts
month.
payable warrant falls. Yep.
Okay. All right, and I know the insured value factor was similarly off a little bit the same way, so that explains it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Council, any questions? Okay.
So if you look at the packet that we handed out this evening, this is geared towards a couple of the questions that we received back on Friday afternoon and this earlier today. The revenue piece that we have in front of you, it basically states our local subsidy that we get that on a monthly basis. It's the same set amount, assuming that the state of Maine doesn't cut funding. Well, they have done that before, but as of right now, it looks pretty positive. The local share and additional local share, that is the city of Saco's responsibility for the local raise and additional local raise that was raised for taxes. That is basically a monthly journal entry that Glennis and I both book. She books it on her due froms, I book it on mine, and I put it in as revenue. So that's a monthly journal entry. The other areas that we have revenue for that we've kind of discussed during the budget time is transportation fees. That's $210,000. What you'll find as the year goes on, our year-to-date through June will max out around $90,000. The additional amount of that revenue is what we bill to Thornton Academy at the end of the year. That is we are billing them our cost for transporting their Arundel students to their school department. It's an agreement. It's a memorandum of understanding. We've been doing this is I believe our 3rd year that we're doing this for them. What this did is allowed Thornton Academy to have additional students be transported to their schools, as well as allowing us to make a little bit of money by managing the fleet. We also got 3 semi-new buses out of it, and so essentially whatever it costs the Saco citizens, we bill them and they reimburse us. But it goes into that line there. Rental income's a little high. We usually don't actually rent our facilities out for $12,000, mainly because we do have an understanding with what's that sports? XL Sports, thank you. So they use our facility, we use theirs. So we are going to be looking at that this year for our budgeting standpoint. I think $12,000 is a little aggressive. Probably closer to $5,000 is really truly what we bill out. Miscellaneous funds of $10,000. We do get that throughout the course of the year. Almost every year we do hit that. Nothing's come through yet. The Dayton regular ed tuition, we have not received payment on. These are Dayton students that attend our Saco Middle School. We charge them tuition for attending our school since they don't have a middle school on their own. So we have not billed them for that. Well, we haven't received the funding for the billing yet, but we are projected to reach that revenue this year. Last year we actually had a couple more students, which was even better for us. Let's see what else we have. State agency client, that is billable expenses that we pay out for reimbursements for services that we provide for our students. And one of the questions was brought up over Medicaid funds. We are currently, the revenue that we've received for that is not due to the BHP billing yet. That is for our OT, PT, and speech. We have started the billing process. I'll let Dom speak about that a little bit more.
So just to be really clear on when we started, we hired all of our PACTS staff in the beginning. So we started in September. So when they came on, not only did they have to develop the program and work with the principal and the staffing of the schools, they had to start this billing process. So I'm going to quickly go down. There's 10 steps. We have gone through all these steps and now are billing. Maine Care and DHHS has been very gracious to us, and we are back billing now. So Celeste has gone through that. We had about 30 students. With those 30 students, we had to call an IEP meeting. So it's an individual education program for each of those students. We had to get consent, parent consent to do the testing, which is a long, drawn-out, functional type of test that we had to do on these 30 students that are in this PASS program. About 8 of the parents declined to go forward, basically because we have to talk about what those need, what would billing for Maine Care do to their benefits on the long term, which we do a really good job at. We finished those evals. We had to call yet another IEP meeting. The psych staff that's in part of that process, they got the permission. They had to write a written notice. They had to write the IEP. They had to put the BHP in the IEP. They had to plug it into the Maine Care system, get approval from the Maine Care system, and then bill. So that's the process, and to do that in 2 months, our staff is amazing. We have the most unbelievable staff that we've hired to do this, and we're adding more students as we go along. We started with the PASS, the behavior program first, and we're moving into other areas to do billing. So, but that's where we are right about now. So we will have more numbers as we come in, but I don't want to say anything here because we don't really know the whole fact. But we are billing. I just want to make very clear that that's what we've done.
We just haven't received any of the funds yet. So the billing is in the process. We just have not received any revenue. And the very last one is disposal of property. We sold a couple buses this year, so there is no budget for that because we don't anticipate selling. But we did make $4,000 off of a couple of the buses we sold, so that's a positive. So that is the rundown on revenue. That was something that was left off on the report, non-intentionally. I guess I didn't get attached to it, and I apologize for that. The next information is some of the, Councilor Johnson was looking for some info on where our student count was. We do update you on a regular basis with this as well. We just happened to, he wanted to know what this year versus last year's number were, and we didn't usually compare that when we're talking about it, so it was a good exercise for us. If you flip to the next page, it explains where we are October of 1920 versus October of 1819. As you can see, we're up a total of 84 students. 62 of those students are due to our pre-K expansion this year, which is fantastic. Thornton Academy, as you can see, we are down 23 students from last year. Again, we did budget 933 students. We currently had, as of the beginning of October, 923, but I was notified that they did have 5 more by the end of October. So that number constantly changes from now till April, and we'll have a final number at that point. So overall, as a district, we have 2,782 students this year, which again is 61 higher than prior year.
Excuse me. Councilor Archer, did you have a question?
Yes, I just wanted to go back to the Maine Care. We just kind of
Sure, go ahead.
I didn't want to interject. So I understand how Maine Care can be very cumbersome, is the best way to say it, and that you don't always get 100% of what you bill out. What is outstanding? What have the schools submitted to them to be potentially billed? Understanding that we might not get 100% of what we bill out because that's the system. But what are we at today?
Well, we billed for about 22 students right now. So what that includes is social work services.
So there's amount of hours related
it's
to that.
actually units, and when they put that through. So right now we have just plugged in all of parts of September and all of October. So I don't have the information tonight. I don't have it.
You don't typically know what's like an average?
So it's based on, again, what's...
You don't necessarily see that.
So the individual that is in charge of entering this data in has been working on it. We don't have the exact data because I'm not sure where she is right now on that. Again, that's something they're working on right now.
Past practice with Maine Care billing is constantly looking at what
And she probably would. She was not and currently, and she was absent today. She was sick, so.
Well, I think in the future we'll be giving you that information because I know it's a very hot topic. So we'll definitely be getting that to you.
Where are you
As
forecasting your $1 million revenue?
well, I think we'll be talking that with finance department first because we haven't even got there yet. So our next finance department in January will be reviewing most of that.
Are you still on target for $1 million in revenue? That would be something you would know.
We're not sure yet.
Well, we wouldn't be exactly sure of that until how many. So let's back up a little bit on the detail on where that number came from. So when we were presenting budget, we originally had estimated, based on the amount of students and the student hours, we had a dollar figure for the school board. Later on, after realizing, well, might not get up and get going right off the get-go, like kind of like what happened this month. I mean this year in the beginning of September. So we tried to back that down in order to make our budgetary numbers pan out well. The school board did charge us for, I'm hoping that it was closer to we did have $90,000 or so originally budgeted for OT, PT, and speech. That's fairly almost close. Correct. So they basically charged us to try to get an additional $900,000. So again, the numbers was more so to make it work and to try to merely push us and the program to succeed, which according to Dom and the process, it really is going great. We just don't have the numbers to back up where we are right now. We will have that as soon as I get a chance to actually analyze it with her based on what she's budgeted, based on our costs that we currently have. We'll have a full analysis on that as we get going, but she's only been able to bill 1 month's worth, so.
Yeah, what is that 1 month?
And we'll welcome any of you to come in the office anytime, and we'll walk you right through it. Anytime you want to come in, some of you have been in and to talk with me, so I welcome you anytime, and we can review that.
I didn't get this until Saturday afternoon, so I haven't had school. So, and anytime I see a 1% of revenue based on almost halfway through the fiscal year, this acts as a concern. I thought you would do a little bit more research on why we're at 1%, knowing that that's a flagged item for this festival.
I think we just explained that. We had to go back, we back billed. So what we're doing is, okay, so we don't.
When I do billing, I know what forecasted. I go to the state of Maine and we charge 100 hours, and we'll just say it's $100 an hour. So I know in my mind that I billed that amount. I also stated that, yes, Maine Care doesn't always give you back every credit you billed for. But at least I've had in my mind, even if we get 90% of what I billed, I would have $9,000.
Yep, we can get that. Yeah, we'll look into that and get that information to you.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? School board, any questions? Thank you. Go ahead.
So the next piece was just a overall student count for the last 4 years. And I apologize, it didn't come out on colored paper, trying to save some money. But as you can see, where it is in row of 15, 16, 16, 17, 17, 18, and where we are today. Kind of shows the trend of the different schools, the various enrollment, how it fluctuates, and just kind of show where we are today versus we were maybe 4 years ago as well. So again, that's just an additional something for you to review as you feel fit. The data behind that is more informational on. Discussed this a little bit earlier on our expenditure budget for special ed. What this shows you is truly where our numbers are for various schools and the students' needs. This is our special ed department. They have it broken. We broke it down by a composite room, PACTS program, resource, developmental, as well as one of the main numbers that I'm concerned about is in the far right column under totals. Each one of those schools also has additional students in referral still. We have approximately 22 students still in referral. We currently have 460 special ed students. If you compare that to last year's of 426, that's 34 more students this year than last, and we still have 22 in referral. So you're talking approximately potentially over 50 plus students, which is our highest needs students, as well as most individual teaching students, ed techs, that need to be with those students. So
Yeah, and I think one of the other part of that is the transfer students, and you can go, and if you want to talk to any of our principals, they'll be happy to talk to you. Mostly Fairfield, we had a lot of transfers move in. These transfers came with IEPs, with one-on-ones. So by law, federal law, we have to take those IEPs and we have to hire, whether it's a BHP or an ed tech, whatever's in that IEP, then we have to make sure that that's happening. Whatever the services are, we have to do that. So, and we had a lot of transfers in. I think that's important. So we're transient. We did have some transfers go out, but not as many that came in.
And the second page on that kind of just gives a little more detail on the types of behaviors or learning disabilities that we are dealing with, and it breaks it out by the numbers there. So again, that's just for review, for some more documentation for you.
And just to do a quick, definition of certain things, because I know that some of this is all new to you. We talked about PACTS, which is our behavior program. Developmental is our functional life skills. These kids are functionally at a different level, and then we work through them to do a lot of functional life skills and daily life activities. Composite room is an old term that we brought back here. It's an old regs a long time ago, but we use it because we really don't have a halfway program. So we have kids in the regular resource room. Those kids are remedial. They should not have different types of behaviors or functional life skills issues. They're coming in to get remediated, which is the purpose of special ed in math, reading, or writing. So that's really what they're targeting. The composite room does a little bit of both. They do both the resource of targeting the instruction, but also some of those behaviors. So typically, when I started in my career as a director in instructional support or special ed, ADHD students were really the hardest kids. Those more now or less are in this composite room. That could be mainstreamed, they're supported, and so forth. Our PATHS kids, and it goes by least restrictive environment, so some of these kids, a composite room kid would be 50% of the time in the regular classroom, 50% not. Most of the PATHS kids are, it all depends on each individual kid. So I just want you, there's different programs at each school. So if you go in, talk to the principal, they'll take you to each of the programs.
The next sheet is just on our staff count. That was another question Mr. Council Johnson was looking for. Where are we currently in our staff count versus last year? The breakdown, I have it right there for you, for teachers, and teachers could be special ed teachers, regular ed teachers, literacy interventionists. That groups them all into one. Ed techs, principals, CO salary, CO hourly, as well as where we are this year versus last year. The differences are to the right. The answers of the differences are down below. So for example, if you look at teachers and you see, wow, we have 18.2 teachers more this year than we did last year. So it explains to them what is it that we added. 5 of them were the pre-K teachers, 2 Burns teacher, 1 was the STEM that was a RAD, and the other one was a 3rd grade that was also a RAD, 2 regular ed social workers that just mainly deal with regular ed students. We had to increase a young kindergarten teacher based on student enrollments that you could see back on the previous page that we talked about. Speech and language, 2 composite teachers, and the BCBAs. Now, the majority of those, I'd say all but the kindergarten teacher at Young and the speech and language were RADs. As well as a special ed SMS teacher. So those 3 positions were not RADs. They were included based on need, based on student needs, student numbers. Below is the ed tech increase. That to me is the most concerning. There's a 22 different. Now that number is a little bit higher than what was actual. We had 6 open positions last year that weren't filled. So the number of 79 ed techs was really 85. But again, we have now 101 ed techs. And again, those are all due to the needs of the special ed students that we have, requiring one-on-one ed tech support. The half-time additional principal, that's actually not really a principal, that's a pre-K coordinator. That's just the way that they're categorized in the NEO system, which is the Maine Department of Education state data for all of our positions that every school department is required to input. Again, the CO salary, that's not a new position. That was currently the IT specialist that moved to salary for the new supervisory duties. For the specialist position that was a RAD, that was added for this year's budget. So, let's see, secretaries, this because of the new pre-K program, as well as the transportation, food service, and custodial needs all increased due to the pre-K program needs and being in separate locations, having to satellite food, having to take care of additional spaces. So again, that's all for your reference right there. The only other the next one was another graph just to kind of show where we've been over the last 3 years. The only other questions that were asked by Council Johnson that's not in your packet, looking to, I think we already discussed the special ed for Thornton Academy and the regular ed Thornton Academy costs. He inquired about legal fees. We have currently spent $83,000 on legal fees. $12,000 of that is general representation for whether it be lease signing, personnel inquiries. The $62,000 of that was for the pre-K lease for Toddle Inn, and $10,000 of that, or $9,500, was this special ed representation. So those are costs that also that was inquired about. If anybody has any follow-up questions, again, we are going to do more forecasting. I will have the final, both Glennis and myself, I'm sure will be presenting the final budget, final audit for last year. So we have those numbers, and we'll have a presentation. I thought it's going to be January, beginning of January. RKO will come and visit on that. We'll start doing continuous, again, every month we have a finance department meeting. You guys are more than welcome to show up. It's usually the hour before our board meeting on the first Monday of the month. We talk about, again, where we are at the fiscal year each year, as well as any other upcoming expenses that we may need to discuss.
Thank you. Councilor Copeland, you have a question?
I just had some questions about the legal fees. So, and I don't know how, I know that you zeroed them out because you had to bring it down. I don't know how that works in a practical world. I know that you have the authority to move money from one account to another, but I'm going to leave that there. But I do have a question about the $62,000 for the pre-K. So how much of that is about the real estate transaction, like the lease and all that, and how much is litigation?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question one more time?
I'm curious, of the $62,000 for the pre-K, how much of that is for the lease, the real estate piece of that, and how much is for the litigation?
So essentially, this is from July 1st expenses. So the cost that has incurred was the documentations and meetings that the lawyers had to represent to both the planning board as well as the city council, discussions between whether or not we can be on the premise of those July 1. So all of that was essentially due to the lease. I'm not really sure how you want to broke it down.
Well,
everything
litigation
to do with whether
in
or
the
not
courts.
All that expense was whether or not we can be in part of that building. Can we actually be in the building?
So you don't have a breakdown for litigation versus what it would have been if the work would have gone?
It's 100% litigation.
Right.
It's Drummond and Woodson. That's 100%. Every time we had a discussion with them, whether it was a phone call, whether it was them having to write up documentations, whether them having to do any type of research for, meeting with the board, coming to executive sessions.
And the fact that they didn't do their due diligence and cause part of this, the Saco citizens are going to pay for that?
I can't answer that. We were billed for $62,000 for legal fees.
Has the issue been brought up that they failed to do due diligence and find out that this was an issue as part of the lease?
We can't comment on that.
You can't comment on that. I'm curious why.
Is there our representation for legal? They're doing their job.
I find that frustrating on behalf of the citizens of Saco. That's a lot of money.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes, to piggyback off what Councilor Copeland was just asking, I understand you can't discuss things because it's a legal matter, but have we stopped the payments?
Stop payments to who or to
The
what?
Toddle Inn.
Correct. Yep. We did not make the November payment. Correct.
And is there any indication that the rent payments that you made will be coming back?
I think that's to be discussed through legal counsel. I think that's probably the goal of the board based on how it was ruled, but again, that's going to be decided through legal.
Okay. Are those discussions ongoing? I mean, from a council standpoint, you left here from the schools with us denying that extension into the Spring Hill. and we haven't had any update, so I'm just curious, are you pursuing, or is the school department pursuing something, or is Toddle Inn pursuing something? We're kind of in limbo here.
Nothing's going on right now. So I would say all the attorneys are talking to each other, including your own. And that's all I can say.
Councilor Johnson, you have more?
It did. Oh, yeah. So I would like to thank you for this. And going forward, I'd hope that it be included in future budgets, because from my perspective, as long as I've been here, I've watched RADs adding teachers or staff, and year after year having no indication as to where we are as an organization. So this is outstanding, so thank you. Staff count.
Yeah, you're very welcome, and if you want additional years past, we do have, I believe, the documentation through 16, 17, fairly easily at our disposal. Something similar to this format.
Yeah, I would like that if
Sure.
possible.
We'll see how far we can go back for you. Absolutely.
Councilor Archer?
Bringing up the tuition, the rent, the Toddle Inn, I think maybe look at preschool costs. Is the $100,000 in rent for the pre-K Toddle Inn included in the year-to-date expenditure?
It is. Yep. It's actually not underneath the pre-K department, though. You'd find that underneath operations and maintenance. So if you look under operations and maintenance, hold on a second, I'll get you a page number for it.
So your op and maintenance balances will eventually start to tilt back in our favor, if you know what I mean? Because now we're not paying the same amount of rent
Correct.
a month for pre-K. So what I'm looking here is that it's starting to shift more positively on our behalf.
So essentially, if you look at report, operations and maintenance report, and you look on page 6, it shows what we have made for those rent payments underneath both DOE approved lease purchases and then lease classroom lease unapproved. Those two lines have been set. The cost that we had originally budgeted under contracted services on page 7 for pre-K potential construction cost originally was $92,000. So the rent that we have paid to Toddle Inn is almost a wash compared to what we had for contracted services for operations maintenance. So at that point, the only rent you'll be seeing there is for church, for the church, as well as the revenue that we will be receiving for the church approved. We actually were able to get it approved last minute. They reopened it for us, which was great. We'll start to see that revenue on our ED 279 for the next fiscal year.
Can you clarify the revenue?
Yeah, it's $8. I'm sorry, it's $8 per square foot. The reimbursement. I'm sorry, reimbursement. So we get reimbursed.
We're renting it out, so.
So we get reimbursed $8 a square foot in the church for the lease that we have there. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Copeland, did you have a follow-up?
Yes, please. Yes, please. So when you guys talked to us about the agreement, there was this huge amount of money the state was going to pay. Have they paid? Has, there was, what, $800,000 or something? I don't know.
Are you talking about the square footage reimbursement for Toddle Inn?
So none of that's been...
What?
Right, well, I'm not sure where it was going to be reimbursed from, but I understood that it didn't matter that it was $30 a square foot because the state was reimbursing. So I guess it's the lease.
Okay, so there might be two different things I think you may be touching upon. Are we getting the full subsidy for the pre-K students? Is that what you're asking?
I was talking about the lease.
Okay, so the lease. So in order to the state to have approved our 10,000, well, when we originally were trying to lease the Toddle Inn building of 10,000 square feet, they would have been, assuming we would have gotten approval for it, they would have reimbursed us $80,000. That's correct. But since we never actually took place in the building, nor did we have any students in the building, no, we are not going to get any reimbursements for that since we were not occupying that space. We didn't get the certificate of occupancy, correct?
Thank you. And all right, that's all. Thank you.
Councilor Johnston, did you have a follow-up?
Yes. So you currently pre-K in the church, here on Main Street. Is there any indication if that lease is going to be extended for another year, or what's the future plans?
We have a perfect segue if we're done with all of that, because we do have our infrastructure committee, and Art is here, and he has something to prepare for you. So once we're done with all that, we can go into space needs, because that's another issue that's happening.
Just follow up to that. Is there a counselor, any member of this board here to put mayor on that infrastructure committee?
Not right now.
Would that be considered, I guess, by the mayor?
I think that's what Art is going to be asking. So I think in his testimony, he's going to be talking about that.
Councilor Copeland, did you have a follow-up before we move on?
I did have two quick questions. One is going back to the legal fees. So it sounds like they're still ongoing. Our attorneys apparently meeting with your attorneys, whatever. Is there an estimate of what the legal fees are expected to be? I know attorneys can do that for you.
So currently, the expense that I listed of a total of $83,000 was as of our current bills in the warrant as of today. So no, I don't currently have any. Well, be honest, a majority of that cost was several weeks ago, so we haven't really seen much or heard or had much conversations for legal at this point. I'm sure there will be additional costs. What that will entail, I can't imagine it'll be to the tune of the $62,000 that we've already spent by any means. But what if we have? Let's put it this way: if more continuous discussions come about and we feel as though the legal fees will be starting to creep up, we'll let you know.
Thank you.
Okay, let us know. Regarding pre-K, but not about the budget, I have been contacted by a constituent and who questioned having the pre-K in a church, being a separation of church and state. So I just want you to be aware of that.
Yeah, and our board has had actually legal advice around that, and it was actually discussed, and it was okay to do so.
Any more questions from the council? Moving on to the Infrastructure Committee of the School Board. Will that encompass this handout that was provided? Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, fellow school board colleagues, school administrators, and community members. Speaking to you tonight to discuss and make formal recommendation from the Infrastructure Committee of the School Board around our space needs for our schools, capital improvements that need to be done. It is critically important for the safety of our students, staff, and outside community members to keep our buildings updated and optimal for learning. Our recommended list compiled for years 1 to 5 is part of the draft infrastructure plan. We're asking for your monetary support to help keep our buildings updated and safe. Based on last year's budget and Jason's presentation tonight, we do not have the money to keep our buildings safe and optimal for learning. This is critical. We are going to prepare our students for the 21st century learning. This is the sheet I gave you tonight. What we have is a 5-year plan. If you look at that, 3 schools alone have need new roofs. There's no way that we can keep up with it. Last year, I think we spent about $50,000 or $60,000 to try to fix some of these items. We usually pick the smallest ones that we can do. I think the average for 4 years is something like $90,000 that we take out of our budget to try to keep them up. What I can see happening is that, like a few years back, we had to pass an $8 million bond to get our schools up to date. And everybody said, why didn't they do it? We don't have the money to do it. I think it's very important for the council to look into that. Now, past council bought a teen center. It strikes me funny that you can find money for a teen center, but we can't keep our schools up. And that teen center is going to need a lot of work also. I think our schools are more important than a teen center when we have one in Franklin Street. Now, Mr. Garrett is here if you have any questions for him. He's the one that makes this list.
Thank you very much. Council, any questions? Councilor Copeland?
I haven't had a chance to look at this, we just got it tonight, but right off, I'm just curious, there's a add modular space for $110,000, but in the explanation and need column, it's empty.
Lynn, can you repeat that question? Because
In year one, under add modular space, the cost is $110,000, but under explanation and need, there's nothing there?
Yep, I think Art's going to touch on that again tonight, but that is adding modular space to Fairfield and Young, just to go ahead and keep what the projected numbers are coming into those schools and give those students someplace to go. Because right now I'm working with the planning board to place modulars in the back of Fairfield and in the back of Young. We're in the planning stages now. We're working on site plans and traffic studies, and probably right after the first of the year we'll be looking at having neighborhood meetings, all based on a lot of what's said tonight.
Thank you.
Councilor Johnston?
How many modulars at the Fairfield School are you looking to add?
The original plan was to go ahead and take the one we have there now, turn it, and orientate it in another direction, and then add one next to it. But with new discussions with Maureen and new numbers, it looks like we're probably going to add, or need to add, 2 more classrooms in there. So right now, we're looking at probably 4 to 6 additional classrooms.
Would that, and this might not be for you, would that include additional classroom space for the music and art that was kicked out due to this expansion of a day program?
I believe so.
Yeah, I also want to just clarify, in January, the only thing nothing's really been kicked out, I think that's not a correct statement. The only thing that's on a cart is library. So what's going around is library.
Excuse me, it started with art on a cart, and I know this firsthand because my daughter goes to the
Right,
school.
and then what happened was we moved it to library because they're constantly moving around certain things. So the only thing that was in the beginning was art, and now we decided to move, actually Maureen, because these are her decisions from her school, they decided to move library on that. But the whole goal is to have have library, art, and music out in those modulars. That's kind of what the plan would be.
It was my understanding that that was going to occur at the beginning of the year, and it now sounds like it's going to be pushed into next year.
And I think the hope was for that, but we have to go through planning, traffic studies, and there's a process now that we have to
And I
make sure we're
understand
following.
that, but
So that's,
the school department also knew that they were going to be adding programming at these schools and didn't take into account that they needed additional space.
well, the additional space is due to the need of the student in the composite room. We needed additional classroom space.
Jason, I understand that, but the point is that the school collectively made a decision to expand programming, and you didn't have adequate space at the time. So instead of, at the same time, last budget cycle, coming forward and saying, we also need a modular for art or the library or music, we didn't do that. And so now we're into a school year where you don't have adequate space.
Again, sometimes you can and can't anticipate the student growth, though, in those programs, and it's constantly changing, and that's why you had the composite room take over a classroom.
Okay, you can't predict the growth. You knew how many kids you had in art and in
we know-
music in the existing school. I mean, it's a pattern
We
here
also
through
had
years
more-
I've been here.
And if you look at the transfers going into the back in the documents of how many came in, and again, I think only one of you has been in Fairfield when it's in action. Go look at the behavioral programs that's going on during the day. At night, it's fine, but go in there and look what's going on in there. I mean, Maureen does an amazing job organizing that building. But she had more transfer students move in to her building than any other building. So that composite room was developed and then added to it. I mean, the numbers in there are already very, very large.
You were
But
already
we didn't plan on that. I don't know how we plan on transfer students
You were
coming in.
already bursting at the point. I mean, I go back to last year. There wasn't adequate space last year.
And I think Art is going to try to help with that and ask the city council for help around that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from council?
Point very well taken. And that is part of why we're here tonight, to start those conversations.
Well,
Absolutely understand the issues and the concerns. And we want to tee this up now We want to be having this conversation so that we don't run into the issues we had last year.
Thank you. And Art, did you have it more?
Yes. The next item I'd like to discuss with you is the need for immediate space in our K-2 schools. Space continues to be a challenge in all of the buildings due to growing enrollment, student needs, and specialized programs. There has been some extreme false information surrounding this issue, and I have Principal McMullen here who want to ask you any questions about it.
Oh. Are there any other questions from council? Art, go ahead. Oh, Art.
I don't have a question. I mean, we can go through the list. We all know, or at least most of us that are actively involved with the schools know that we have space issues. I guess, and I'm frustrated in the sense that 3 years ago we had, or 5 years ago, we had a school construction committee, and I sat on it, and the entire effort during that process got crammed into replacing a single school because that was the thought that what would pass at bond. The reality is that Young School, Fairfield, and C.K. Burns need to be replaced. And again, at council level, we made a decision to wait for that school construction list. We're on it. I'm frustrated that we made the list, but there's been absolutely no conversation since then. And I understand, as Mr. DePatsy said, that the state says we can't discuss it. Well, if that's the case, then to hell with the list, and let's just move forward. Because if that's really the case, then we're going to be spinning our wheels for the next decade. So that's the conversation I'd like to be having.
Thank you. Art, do you have any more?
Yes.
Thank you.
In addition, we've been going through some following steps in the tax document to obtain permission for 2 double-wide modules. To place one in Fairfield, one in Young, to help with overcrowding issue. Currently, we are on step one, we'll need city council to help expedite this process. These are res for next year's budget, and we have limited this to you now. We're not in the same position as last year. Lastly, as you might know or not know, the Department of Education called on October 9th, stated the State Board of Education is moving forward to vote for the first free school construction project. Currently, we are number 4 on the list. There was no timeline given when the next round will be chosen. However, they look like they are going to be grouped in 3. According to Scott Brown, this is due to the large increase in school construction costs. This is likely to put us out 7 or 8 years for a new school. The Infrastructure Committee is asking for a small steering committee to be formed that involves unbiased members of the school department, city directors, school board, city council, along with 1 or 2 community members, about 8 or 9 members. With experience in this area to act as a steering committee to help us solve issues in space, future school construction, and infrastructure needs of the district. This committee would choose a large stakeholder committee to help with future school construction decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Council questions? School Board Chair?
No, the only thing I'll add, sort of wrapping all that up, is we put our eggs in one basket to get onto the list. That was delayed initially. Again, as Art so eloquently put, we were 4th, and they picked 3. So we're waiting longer. As part of our summer retreat, the board got together, and one of the major goals was to put together a short and mid-range infrastructure plan in order to A, alleviate our current needs, B, plan for our future needs, and C, address some of the future or the past issues that had occurred that surprised council. And again, putting forth that plan, this is that first step tonight. Mr. Garrity explained that we were in the planning board process for those modulars. If you'll recall, that is not a place we were in December of 2018. So we are taking those steps forward, in order to push the infrastructure that we have as far as we can within the limitations while waiting for a new school and a new school construction committee. So that's Art teed it up. There are obviously a lot more discussions to be had. I look forward to hopefully being able to appoint people to that committee and move forward with a group that can have those discussions.
And
My only reason for bringing this up is, in the 1 year that I've been on the school department, all I hear from the council at the time was, we don't know what's going on, you don't tell us. So I'm bringing it in your lap now, you people can decide what you want to do, or how you want to do it. If you want to take this whole budget over and fix these buildings, that's fine with me. You don't have to do it.
Thank you, Art. Stan, did you have a? Just make sure to speak into the microphone, please.
Almost from the time that, you got it up yet? Okay.
Speak right.
From the time I've become a resident of this community, I've been hearing about the replacement for young schools. Shortly after I arrived here, the young school that did exist was found mobile, unable to be replaced.
Yes, he's just.
Does this go up or down?
Yeah. Pull it real close. Pull it real close.
Real close?
There you
Okay. I'll do it real close. Now I see why everybody does this. Okay. I'll start again. Just quick, short. Almost from the time that I've been a member of this community, the new school has been a topic of conversation and discussion and plan and new plans and new groups and new ideas. And here we are. I've been in this community 25 years, and that's about how long the discussion's gone on, and we're still planning, discussing, pointing fingers at each other, not accomplishing a damn thing. Now, the first thing I would like to point out, you're not looking at it the right way. This is one of Saco's golden opportunities. New schools only come along once every 75 years. The new school, the facilities, has one of the biggest impacts on your budget of anything. And as long as you leave old buildings that need to be constantly repaired, and sometimes very expensively, you're not going to solve the problem. You have to start getting serious about what you are going to do for the future. Between now and 8-9 years from now, that's how long it's going to take to get a new school. Also, stop and think of this. It will have the biggest impact on this community for economic development, distribution of population, road construction, and on goes the list of anything that you're looking at now. That's why you have to be involved, because it's going to impact on everything that you do. And the longer you all wait to get involved, the bigger the issue is going to get. Because in the end, while the school board makes the final decision on where the building's to be located, on the design of the building, because of the impact on education, you, in the end, have to figure out how we're going to pay for this. You can't sit on the sideline. You've got to be a part of the discussion, a willing part of the discussion. Not pointing fingers at us and saying, how come you didn't do this 5 years ago? Well, I got a better one. How come you didn't do it 25 years ago? We've always got a reason why we wait. Well, I'm giving you a reason why we can't wait anymore. You've got to start listening to the voter who wants to know, where is the new school? Now, the point they're saying, I haven't heard a damn thing from anybody that's doing anything about it. Guess what? They're right. We're waiting for the state to come up with their funds, but there are all kinds of things that we can do while doing that. For example, where should the school be? For example, what should be the road patterns that should be looked at? For example, how's this going to impact population distribution? And on goes the list. And you have the answers to the questions I just raised. Not me, you. Furthermore, I'm not going to be here to see the consequences of this, because remember what I said? Once in every 75 years. I'm just a few months short of 80 years old. I don't think I'm going to see the consequences of what we don't do or do. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. Any other school board members? Any? Go ahead, Beth. Oh.
I just have one comment, and that is that I think in all my years of budgeting in schools, sometimes we budget for what we want to happen, not what we realistically expect to happen. And we get into some problems that way, and not, you know, there are differences of opinion within a board, but I think you have to be careful. It's not the thing we want to achieve on the budget. It's the thing we think most likely will occur. I also do feel that it would have been better to leave some surplus and not spend it down, as we're going to do, because it's dangerous to do that. You look bad when unexpected things occur, and they have occurred, and they will occur. And we kind of got caught a little bit in that, I think.
Thank you. School board member Johnston.
I don't know if this mic is really working. And I know my voice does not project that well. Certainly we've all had some important things to say here today about this whole question, and I don't need to repeat anything that other people have said. But I did have, we have an infrastructure committee meeting on Thursday if it doesn't snow or something like that. So we will be getting more information. I would personally love to see the verbal information that Art shared with all of us in print, as well as this particular sheet, which gives us some idea of what our 5-year plan is, which can be adjusted and probably will be before 5 years are out. But one of the things that I wanted to ask Mr. Garrity, because it was something that came up at the last meeting, had to do with where we are in the planning board process for those modulars.
Just remember to please speak into the microphone
Sorry.
so the folks can hear you.
Me. That's great. So Mr. Garrity was telling us last meeting that we have made, I guess, an application to planning, but I was wondering if he could give us a little bit of an update as to where we are with that now.
Sure, Mr. Garrity.
I just met with Emily probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, just to touch bases and make sure we're still going in the right direction. I can't put the application in yet because we still need information that I'm going to get with plot plans and plan development, and then still some traffic stuff. So right now, talking to her right after the first of the year, I'll still plan on having a neighborhood meeting, which we still have to do, we can go ahead and meet with the department heads and stuff for an abbreviated or a quicker kind of a way through the planning board. And then we can go ahead and put the application in, which gives us plenty of time to be on the docket for the next planning board meeting. I think we have 90 days after that. So that would put us probably in the spring when we get through our application process, and then we could go ahead and work through the summer with the budget and everything to get these buildings in place during the summer when we can place them.
And just one more question for you, Mike. I'm trying to follow what you had said earlier. Are we actually looking for 2 modulars to add at Fairfield, or just 1 and then 1 at Young for next year?
As it stands right now, I'm still looking for 1 at Young School, and then probably 2 additional ones at Fairfield.
Fairfield, okay. Thank you.
To give me 4 additional classrooms to what we have in place right now. How we configure that, we'll figure that out.
Thank you. And then I think the only other thing I wanted to just mention is at the last infrastructure committee meeting, as I recall, the superintendent did say to us that we can, and Dominic, you can correct me if I'm misquoting you, but I believe you said that we could begin to start talking about, in some capacity, or planning for new school construction. Because we have been more or less told that it's kind of like we can't go there. But you said something to indicate that maybe we can, in some capacity, begin to discuss this.
Well, I think what Art's trying to say to everyone, I think this small committee, the steering committee, could be developed so we can decide whether we want to wait or not. I mean, I think that's basically what I think Art was trying to express, and then also what Nathan was trying to say too. Do we want to wait or not? Do we want to wait for this money, or what do we want to do? We did have a meeting this morning, which is kind of breaking news. Everything happened so quickly. I know Jason, myself, Mike Garrity, and Peter met with a reporter. And the reporter's going to do a story kind of on the whole Young School. It was very interesting that she had a conversation with the Commissioner of Education before I was notified. But supposedly in the January, when we start in the spring legislation, there is going to be, she is going to be asking for an extra $25 million on the ceiling for the school construction, and also hopefully take another $20 million out of the CTE. This is more complicated. Another pot of money that was going to be for CTE type of building. So she said this to the reporter. The reporter told us, and we were like, well, this is new news. So I'm going to follow up on that. So I think there's might be something in the spring, but I still think, going back to Beth's discussion, I think it's a good idea to have a smaller, Art recommended, I think the infrastructure committee recommended a smaller group. The last school construction group was very large, unwieldy. I mean, it was ran by 3 different superintendents, and I came in towards the end, and the rest is history for that part. But that was our recommendation from our last infrastructure committee, which any of you are more than welcome to come to.
Thank you. School board member.
Raise your hand. Okay. This is the infrastructure committee, just in case you want.
Thank you. Beth, do you have any? Do you have anything further, Beth? No. Any other school board members?
Sorry. So this has been really quite informative, so I really appreciate the conversation. One question I do have, and I think it's to what Beth was bringing up. I don't understand why the state wouldn't be open to our sort of providing some initial feedback on, you know, if they're coming in and they're, so when I was just surprised to hear that maybe like we couldn't be planning because the, you know, the state might shut us down. I don't know what it would be, but I don't understand that.
And I think Jason heard this. I know Mike Garrity's talked to Scott Brown for many years. It's just it's recommended that this is before the new information came out about the top 3. In the last list, which we weren't on, we didn't do applications on, they took the top 5. Now they're taking the top 3 because of school construction costs. But it's recommended for us to not go out, look for land, do not have minutes, do not do pre-planning purposes of that, because you have to follow their strict I mean, I haven't gone through this process, but it's very, very strict. You have to do this, you have to form this, you have to go through this step, check this box. It's very prescriptive, and so we didn't want to do anything to jeopardize that money. But if we decide that we don't want to go through that process, we just got to let them know, and then we're off the list.
So, thank you. Any other school board member questions? Council questions? Council Archer?
So that document says very prescriptive. That's not public knowledge, or we can actually just look at it now and just
Right on.
operating it that way. And the other question that the downside is, do they amend that prescription a lot?
They just recently amended was it the application process? Can't remember what they amended, but not typically. It's pretty structured.
We could call it exploratory studies. It's done all the time.
Right.
Yeah, you.
We can start looking into it, a little bit of cost out of our own pocket.
Yeah, I think that's what Art is recommending.
Forward with a packet, almost package that goes into like, hey, does this work for you?
But I think it's more than just that. I think it's all the space needs too. I don't think it's just to look at this new school. I think it's the whole piece of what Art was asking you guys to look at, help us fund our schools, make sure, because we keep the upkeep, we've done a really good job over the years, but there's a lot of significant needs that we need to do. So it's not just where the new school's going to be and all that type of stuff, but that's part of it. So we're looking for this. It's a larger picture.
Thank you.
Again, start moving forward. What's the vision that we're going to kind of look like? What we suggested to the state and fund is then that would help us target which school needs services. So I'm just going to throw a school out. There's no validity to it, but let's just say Fairfield's identified that we're going to get brand new. That would then shift our focus away from a brand new Fairfield roof. Why would you do that? Knowing you're going to change it, and that would then prioritize middle school or Burke.
And we've been doing that. I think that's one of the things that we've been doing for a long, long time. I mean, Beth's been on there for a long, long time. We've been doing that. SMS probably won't, it's not going to be a piece, but I think the larger picture is how many schools they want to, if they want to combine. They will consolidate. That is a fact. There's going to be a pre-K to, it's going to be a pre-K to 2. I don't know. Burns scored very low. They were not happy with that school. I can tell you, and Mike was there for we did the whole tour. So it's not conducive to learning. So I'm not sure.
Good in funding sense?
Very good in funding sense. But it all depends on where we want to go with that. It still has to go out right in the index ceiling.
Thank you. Councilor Copeland? Hold on, Stan. Councilor Copeland?
I just want to say thank you. It's about time. These are the conversations that we want to have. This is the planning that we need to go forward. This is the communication we need to have. So I am thrilled that Mike has gone through all the work and figured out, and that you've come up with some ideas and a strategy for moving forward. It's good for the citizens of Saco and the students of Saco. So thank you.
Councilor Minthorn?
So, if the...
Hold on, 1 minute, Stan. 1 minute, Stan.
So, if the rumor mill out of the Commissioner of Education is true, we might see by the end of the short session the money to take number 4 and make it a viable target, if you will, and we get the list moving forward and all this starts. We're still probably 5 years out on the earliest of having doors open in a new facility. Next worst case is it would be 12 months later in June that the next round of funding would come through from the legislature in the long session. So we'd probably be 6 to 7 years out roughly at that juncture. Between now and then, this small executive committee, whatever we want to call it, I think really needs to get formed, get put together, get the appropriate individuals from both city side and school side without having an enormous group that becomes dysfunctional, and selectively target Mike's list here at the same time playing the what if the short money comes through or the next money comes through, as well as possibly address, we know we're 5 years out. Is it a viable option to keep pre-K at the church for 5 years, Or should we be looking at adding additional portables at Young to accomplish that goal for a 5-year goal? At the same time, there might be some opportunities to add additional staff parking at Young in an area that would be less intrusive to the overall footprint out there. And if we could have staff-only parking, maybe a second lot moved, if you will, to give easier access in and out of Young on the Tasker side, we may be able to make it a safer entrance point off Tasker for everyone, because I know I get all the calls in my ward about the parking over there and how crazy it is and that kind of thing. So maybe there's an opportunity to go ahead, if we can get everybody talking, get everybody at the table, to solve a couple of these issues with 5-year solutions, knowing at the end of 5 or 6 years, we may have a new consolidated facility that all of this is going to move into for at least Young and pre-K, and hopefully some additional students from the other schools. Thank you.
Councilor Johnson.
Well, I think Councilor Archer and Minthorn pretty much summarized everything I was going to say. But overall, I just wanted to say, I mean, for me, this is one of the larger issues as a parent, and I recognize both my children will probably be out of the school, but both, or potentially all 3 of them, by the time this is built. But I just wanted, not to point fingers, but to bring this back forward so that we can all have a unified response to this. Because I think, it's time we do something more than, wait for the state or what have you. So, thank you.
Thank you. School Board Member Marsden.
I appreciate, what I want to do is to correct my poor choice of words, including my comment. It is not a nightmare we brought to you. Al corrected me, and Nathan corrected me. It's an opportunity. That's the way you have to look at it. It's a one chance in your lifetime to have an impact on your community that you never dreamed of when you ran for office.
Thank you.
I think that's how we want to do it, right?
School Board Member Tardif.
What Alan said kind of reminds me of every time the infrastructure comes over that list I gave you. Should we do this, or we're gonna get money for a new school?
I get it.
So we're stuck. And then when we see a roof, we can't afford that anyway. So we've been doing small items, which amounts between $60,000 and $90,000 a year.
Thank you. City Administrator Sutherland.
So I hope the councils will participate in the strategic planning exercise we will look to have. I think it's now going to be on the 13th of January. I think the conversation about education, and that is a priority in our community, has to be part of that conversation and has to be an item that rises to the level that council chooses to put the funding in the budget in this upcoming budget cycle. Another suggestion I have is this is a great 5-year look at the capital needs that the school has identified. Since the city owns those buildings, maybe the infrastructure committee meeting committee group should meet with the capital plan committee that we have for the city side. We need to take a comprehensive look at all of our facilities, and that group should be a part of this conversation. If the needs are this great, we should be putting some more of our priority funding towards these issues rather than some of the other items that may be on that list. Or if council puts capital needs as one of their top priorities, all of the needs should be taken care of or considered as part of the budget process. So let's take this holistically. Let's have maybe ask the infrastructure committee to meet with the capital plan committee after the strategic planning session so they know what they should be putting their funding towards or thinking about to then propose to the council in March as part of the budget process.
Thank you. School Board Member Leary.
I just wanted to say, Lynn, I completely agree with your comment about having these open meetings. And so I just urge all of us to please prioritize these workshops and all show up if at all possible, because we've had a few workshops that there's been very poor attendance. So that's what I would urge everyone, that it is really important. And yeah, we start off this way, and then as the season goes on, less and less people show up. And so we don't have these open communications. And that we respect each other, and we all have differing opinions, but we still have to respect each other and move forward towards the same goal. And I'm hoping we all have the same goals.
Thank you very much. School Board Member Scheinman.
I also agree with Councilor Copeland about the point of view that you said, because I think it sums up what I believe all along, is that the way to get things done is to get together, even though you're operating independently in a way between the school board and the council, but we're in the same city. I mean, to get these results, neither one of us can do it, I think. So I very much appreciate it.
Thank you. Anything further? Council, School Board? Thank you very much. Moving on to Agenda Item B, approval of the rules and order of business. Okay. Thank you. Councilor Minthorn, do you have a motion? Thank you very much.
The city charter, the council is required to develop its own rules and order of business at the first meeting of the newly elected council each year. The council has identified a few changes they would like to consider. Updating the structure of meetings to hold workshops as a new business portion of the meeting. No action other than to move forward for a formal votes at a future meeting. Hold Monday meetings every Monday, excluding the fifth Monday. Change the structure of the council emails to be the first letter, first name, and last name at sacomaine.org. And all other updated policies and document gender neutrality has been addressed. Finally, some additional language changes were made. The council will revisit the rules and order of business at its January 6th meeting to consider additional updates to the document. The City Council hereby approves the recommended changes to the rules and order of business as identified in Exhibit 1.
Councilor Minthorn has made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilor Gunn has seconded. Discussion?
29.
City Administrator Sutherland.
Yes, at last week's workshop, we discussed a few of the simple changes related to the rules and order of business. I have been working with staff, and there are comments in this document that identify areas that we would like to make some additional changes to, and we'll bring those to council under new business at the January 6th meeting, so that on the 13th, if the council wants to move forward with those recommendations or any others that the council has, we would move that on to the 13th and then vote for it then. This, approving it as is, there are still some changes we identified or would like to make, but I think as of right now, this is good enough to get us changing the format and sort of moving forward for the new year.
Thank you. Councilor, questions? Seeing no questions, roll call vote. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Copeland?
Yes.
Councilor Minthorn?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Moving on to Agenda Item C, final reading, Budget Amendment Number 4 for City Hall vehicles. Councilor Archer.
Page 125.
Yeah, no, it's just, I've got the spinning circle.
How many
Code enforcement department uses several vehicles to get inspections in the course of the day. One of those vehicles, a 2009 Ford Crown Victorian police vehicle, has started incurring significant repair bills and needs further work, including brakes. With the addition of the Irish Griffith and the multi-family inspection program, as well as several additional field listers in the assessing department, the department is in need of one replacement vehicle and one additional staff vehicle to be shared between codes and assessing. We have priced out two options, one of which includes moving forward with the city council goal of reduction of department footprint. The prices range from $16,800 per vehicle for an all-gas Chevrolet Equinox terrain-type vehicle and to a high of $24,600 per vehicle for a Toyota RAV4 hybrid. We also received prices for a used Toyota Prius hybrid, but these vehicles have limited use on construction sites. The price for two gas models is $33,600, whereas total price for a hybrid RAV4 is $49,158. Revenues for permits are well ahead of projections. Total revenue as of 10/31/19 is $202,588.74, which is 56.5% of the budget, where we are at a 33% of fiscal year. Be it ordered, the City Council approves the second and final reading of Budget Amendment Number 4, fiscal year 2020. I move to approve the order.
Councilor Archer has made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilor Minthorn has seconded. Discussion? Seeing no discussion, roll call vote. Councilor Archer? Aye. Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Copeland?
Yes.
Councilor Minthorn?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Moving on to Agenda Item D, final reading, Budget Amendment Number 5, School Street purchase.
12.
Councilor Copeland.
I apologize, Mr. Mayor. 12 School Street was purchased on August 27, 2019. This facility will be the home of a teen center on the first floor and adult and senior programming on the second floor. The Parks and Recreation Department strive to ensure that the programs offered are for everyone, and this facility will enhance our community and programs. This facility will start out as a 6-day-a-week operation, with the teen program running Monday through Saturday. Senior programs will be offered during the daytime, and adult programs will be offered in the evening. Once the teen center is up and running strong, we'll open the facility 7 days a week. City staff recommends approval. Be it ordered that the City Council approves the second and final reading of Budget Amendment Number 5, fiscal year 2020, School Street purchase. I move to approve the order.
Second.
Councilor Copeland has moved. Councilor Johnston has seconded. Discussion? Councilor Johnston.
I mean, this is essentially just cleaning up the books, but I wanted to highlight for the new councilors coming in that likely in this next budget cycle, we're going to be, or Parks and Rec will be asking for close to 100 to 150,000 in additional needed expenses. So I just wanted to be transparent about that.
Thank you. Councilor Copeland?
I just wanted to talk about what this is really all about. We heard from one of the school board members that they would rather the money be spent on the school, but this is something that our community really needs and will support the youth. We have kids, what we couldn't call latchkey kids, who are too old for after-school daycare programs, too young to drive a car. So this particular group is in serious need of people paying attention to them, of people giving them the space to become the young people that they are going to grow up to be. We have an opioid crisis out here, and we have kids who are vulnerable. We have kids whose parents work and they trust them to be home, and sometimes those kids in that age group are wicked curious about life and so forth. So what this does is connects the seniors and this middle school age group together. in a place where they can call their own, they can be safe there, they can make it their own with some guidance, but based on their ideas, and have a place to call their own, have a place to grow relationships, to do interesting things that they think of. If they want to start a chess club or they want to play foosball, whatever, we can, as a community, can support them, and we should support them, because we want them to grow up loving Saco, going to college in Saco, in Maine, and staying in our state. So this has so many benefits, it cannot be understated. So I just want everyone to know that that this is a real priority. I know I talked to many people in Ward 4 about this in the campaign trail over the years, and it has a great amount of support. So if anybody has any questions about it, I'm on the Parks and Rec Advisory Board, and we're going to be talking about this. And Nathan is, Councilor Johnston is also on that board, and that board is very supportive of this. And I'm thankful for the leadership of Director Summers, who found this bargain of a building. Yes, we have to put some money into it, that's true, but I think the payback is huge. So please consider all aspects of this. This really is something that is fantastic for our community. The schools have already agreed to bus the kids in. I know there's a traffic issue there, there's no parking. So the schools have agreed to take the kids from when the school bell rings, drive them over there, and they can go in. And we're still developing, protocols and safety issues and so forth, but there are many towns around that have these facilities, and it is a great asset to our community, and I encourage you to be supportive of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councilor comments? Seeing none. A roll call vote. Councilor Archer.
Aye.
Councilor Purdy.
Yes.
Councilor Gay. Councilor Gunn.
Yes.
So used to Roger being right next to me. Councilor Copeland.
A resounding yes.
Councilor Minthorn.
Yes.
Councilor McPhail.
Yes.
And Councilor Johnston.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on to the administrator update. City Administrator Sutherland.
Thank you. I just sent an email right before the meeting got started, so you all have a copy of it. It'll also be posted on the website under administrative updates. The Department of Labor had an inquiry from a Saco resident about the senior tax write-off program. This occurred a few months back, over whether the stipend program should be at the minimum wage. The Department of Labor did an investigation working closely with staff to gather information and review our program. They have decided not to take further action for prior years. This decision was based in part on the fact that the city did change the rate to be consistent with minimum wage going forward. So I want to thank the prior council for moving those changes forward and getting those accomplished this past fall. Representatives from the DOL recognized they need to work together with the Maine Revenue Service to come up with some guidelines on how to administer this program around the state, and that our legislative representative could work with the DOL to amend the wage and hour laws to include this program as an express exemption from a minimum wage. So I encourage this council to maybe reach out to our state representatives to see if there's a chance for them to work with the Department of Labor to clarify some of this information. So I would like to thank our Human Resources team for putting in the time to work with administration to clear this item up with the state. Recording of city council meetings. So with the modification to 4 council meetings a month, we've inquired the intent of minute taking that is written in our charter. So while the administrator is expected to journal the votes of the items on the agenda, the city solicitor has determined that the communications department's video recording of the meetings will satisfy charter requirements without requiring a representative from the city clerk's office to be in attendance. So the reliance on technology, computers and video production equipment to create the sole record of a meeting does introduce the possibility that software and hardware malfunctions could lead to the inability to capture this video record. To avoid this potential pitfall, the Communications Department will implement a pre-meeting system check and continue to record redundant copies of the meeting. The footage will be saved to 2 different local locations independent of each other so that if one fails or corrupts, the other will be available. Video live streams are also automatically saved to our primary streaming location, currently Facebook, which gives us a third redundancy so long as the computer does not fail. So with that note, while we're recording redundancy, the Communications Department does not currently have hardware redundancy. To achieve this, the department would need the following backup hardware available: computer, AVIO, HD video capture device, blade recording device. If the system check identifies a failure in our ability to record the meetings digitally, we will notify the city clerk's office immediately so that they may have a representative physically attend the meeting, or we can use an audio recorder to capture the business conducted during the meeting. So lastly, this places a new importance on the council's voting procedure, since the clerk will be relying on the video record, and if worst case, an audio recording. It's paramount that all votes by councilors are spoken clearly into the microphone, and that voting takes place in a manner where there is no overlapping. So the department discourages votes by raising of hands, as this would create an environment that is hard to accurately perceive through video recording. School board meetings. The Communications Department is also working with the school department to ensure consistency and uniformity in our meeting streaming process. We have made some upgrades and changes, and we would like the school board to partake in that. So Andrew Dickinson, the city's communication coordinator, has prepared a standard operating procedure guide and is training 3 members of the Saco School IT department with an on-site training component happening tonight. So you can all wave to them upstairs. The Communications Department has offered to be on-site to assist with any school department streams during the launch of their live stream capabilities. So Andrew will work with the school department staff to ensure they are running system tests prior to their meetings as well. Regarding the fire department, use of ambulance funds for stretchers. So Saco had applied for funding for these items in the FY 2018 Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program. We were notified this October that our request was not funded. This is a program run by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. However, we were not successful, but city staff are moving forward with power cots and power load systems for the new ambulance, as well as the retrofitting of the 2 2016 ambulances that we currently operate. This will be paid for out of the ambulance fund, so no additional money needs to be allocated by council, as its use matches the requirement of the fund, but we wanted council to be aware. We're also hopeful it will reduce our risk of any on-the-job injuries. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank firefighter Cliff Witten for assisting in putting together this original grant application. While we weren't successful, it shows the dedication our staff have for assisting one another and looking for funding outside the organization to achieve these goals. 2 more, I'll be done, I promise, we're close. North and Garfield Street intersection. So the North Street and Garfield Street intersection was identified as the highest crash location in the Saco Route 112 Exit 36 area traffic study conducted in partnership with Maine DOT and the Maine Turnpike Authority. On September 12th, 2019, Saco's Traffic Safety Committee voted unanimously to implement a no left turns on Garfield Street, which was recommended as part of that study. We're happy to share that since eliminating left-hand turns at the intersection of Garfield and North, 0 accidents have been reported at this intersection. So you can view the additional observations from this traffic pattern change on our website by visiting sacomaine.org/Route 112. We will be sharing this information on the Saco Police Department Facebook page tomorrow, and I believe there's some more efforts to get the data out there to the public. Strategic planning exercise with council, and I mentioned this briefly when the school board was here. The date for the strategic planning exercise with council will be moved to the 2nd meeting of January 13th, 2020. This will provide our new city administrator some time to meet with staff and be better prepared to partake in the discussion. We will look to further review the rules and order business at the January 6th meeting under new business, and then move that forward to old business on the 13th for final ratification.
Thank you, Kevin. And just a reminder that there will be an open house on Friday from 8 to 9:30 in the City Hall conference room downstairs to talk with Kevin individually before he leaves, as this is his last council meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to council discussion and comment. Council Archer, Councilor Purdy, Councilor Gunn, Councilor Copeland, Councilor Minthorn.
One quick note, Kevin, Friday morning I'll be fighting New York City traffic, so I'm sorry I'll miss the event.
Councilor McPhail. Councilor Johnston.
Thank you to Kevin for the last 4 years.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion's been made to adjourn by Councilor Copeland. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilor Minthorn has seconded. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Copeland?
Yes.
Councilor Minthorn?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much. Councilor.